Hey, sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show / podcast for tomorrow. As always, I'm joined by Jared Weiss of The Athletic. We've had two spirited games, sort of, at least. I think the game were spirited, the first one. The score wasn't so spirited, but Jared, thanks for staying up with us tonight.
I can't believe I'm still going. It's been a long day here in the Celtics Nation.
Yes, it has. I'm sorry the dream is gone and dead and over with, but how are you feeling about that?
I really don't care. That team was doomed. So there were no surprises. The exit meetings today were probably the most interesting part of the whole playoff run anyway. Marcus Smart saying that it's bullshit that Kyrie Irving is being blamed for the Celtics woes, and Jaylen Brown really taking a leadership position. That was very fascinating. So that was actually the most interesting thing. And tune into The Athletic tomorrow morning, everybody, so you can read my write-up on that.
Okay, always good to know that. And don't forget, over on YouTube as you're watching, you can always ask questions there or on Periscope, and we're going to get to them as many as we can. Last show was an awesome YouTube experience, which is rare, but again, very encouraging. And so let's discuss this a little bit. Okay, the game itself, I took some notes. Do you have any thoughts yet before I jump into these?
Oh no, you go right ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm gonna kind of run through what I wrote down and see what jogs my memory, because now it's been a few hours. But and I'm hopped up on Sudafed. But anyway, Butler is the best player on the floor on offense. That's what I wrote.
Not bad. I'm also realizing now my mic isn't on, so I'm going to fix that. Thanks for the update. Yeah, okay. Butler, it's been that way, it seems like this entire series, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly the most aggressive, and then in that aggression, successful. Whether or not they're the best shots or not, or part of the offense, it doesn't matter. He's just successful in making a lot of those shots and sort of imposing his will more than Embiid, who I suppose it was his sickness that sort of got him malaised and not really involved as much as he would normally be. And then Simmons was interesting because he had some good numbers scoring wise. I know he had 4 offensive rebounds, and at least 2 of those were tip-ins. So he was doing damage on the offensive rebounding, which is good because he's marginalized on offense a lot anyway. But it didn't feel that impactful to me, those points, as much as for instance, Butler. He was a real key there. Uh-oh, are you there? No, we lost Jared for some reason. He must have changed the settings on his mic and he's frozen. Well, I'm sure he'll come back to life at some point. Hey, this is not my first rodeo. We'll press on until we find him back. Here's another thing I wrote about that, and then we'll go to some questions in a minute. The idea that Gasol can't get a shot in the post against Tobias Harris is ridiculous. So I wrote that, and it certainly there's a couple of times where they throw the ball into Gasol. He's got a huge size advantage, and he just either turns over his right shoulder and he's under the basket too far, doesn't have a good angle to maybe use the glass. It's really, really frustrating that they can't capitalize on that on that end with Toronto. So that is really kind of a troubling thing for me. Check the Philly offensive rebounds. So I wrote yes, which they did. They out-rebounded them a lot, which actually brings up an interesting point I was thinking about earlier during the game, this last game. Thibodeau came in with the Celtics as defensive coordinator and installed ice defense, which forces the ball handler away from the pick and down to the baseline. And he also sort of got everyone away from going for offensive rebounds in an effort to get back on D. That became so paramount to everything that that they didn't want to ever go for offensive rebounds. And I kind of think that that's a marginalized idea now. I think that it's old school at this point, and it needs to be gone away from, partly because some of the best three-pointers that you get out of the offense are off of offensive rebounds. So it would only it would make sense that you would go to the offensive rebound and get more of those. So that's what I'm thinking is the key here as far as what we need to do with getting offensive rebounds. And I think that's what the Sixers are showing. I certainly think in tonight's game, the last game, we saw a lot of offensive rebounds too. We might have Jared back. Are you back, Jared? I can hear you.
Oh, wow.
All right, we're back. So
they can't see me, but they know what I look like. Yeah. Hopefully it's good enough.
Yeah.
There I am.
You're there. So anyhow, all right, so we got you back. You missed a little bit of my analysis during the Raptors and the Sixers a little bit here. But
I was enjoying it. I like this tangent that you've gone on about trying to bring back the offensive rebound emphasis.
Well, yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I was around those Celtics teams that were, that were employing a lot of the Tips principles. He kind of laid that groundwork there and then went into that with Chicago. And so the way that Doc Rivers always explained it back then was that transition defense is the most important component here, and we can let go of offensive rebounding. Those teams didn't shoot a lot of threes. They had a couple guys that were really good 18-foot shooters. So they weren't prioritizing that offensive rebound to kick out as much. I think now wings and guards have become such good rebounders in the NBA. I feel like the significant advantage of the big being the rebounder on the floor has gone down, probably just because the emphasis of the big has gone down. And so because there's more wings on the floor than ever, I think crashing the offensive glass, especially from like different angles, rather than just trying to get two people on the block, trying to fight and grapple in the trenches. It's more about getting a box out going on, which frees up a wing to try to crash in or a guard to try to crash in. We saw tonight Jamal Murray had some great rebounds.
Yeah.
He's really good with that, obviously. So yeah, I think that wings and guards prioritizing crashing the glass more, and maybe even bigs still prioritizing getting back in transition defense is something that we could see increase. But I still think, as great as it is to try to get a second chance and a kick out for an open three, teams are trying to push the pace more. So I think teams are actually emphasizing transition defense even more than before. So I don't think teams are going to really want to take away from that emphasis.
Yeah, but I wonder if maybe out of all this, you end up having like two bigs again, like two almost traditional bigs that are going to do that. You have your three guys who will space on those shots to get the kickouts. Somebody just sent me an article, Radius Athletics, my buddy Randy over there in Texas just sent me an article in Australia. They're playing with all five guys just crashing the offensive glass and seeing what happens. Like, do you ultimately, it's almost like onside kick every time or whatever. You might end up benefiting from it over the long run. So it's intriguing, but I certainly think that, we got to get back to more of a balance. Whereas I feel like in that 2010 era, it was no balance. It was simply get back, don't even look for those offensive rebounds. And I just don't. It just feels like more and more of these teams that are getting these second chance opportunities, it's just too valuable to not go after.
Well, the interesting thing has been that statistically, there doesn't seem to be a big difference in creating transition frequency based off of 3-pointers as opposed to other long distance shots. But we do see more long rebounds that can turn into offensive rebounds because of 3-pointers. So I think that offensive rebounders kind of more at like the second level are becoming more and more a part of the game.
For sure. Well, let's give a shout out to Gigolo Puff out there who's moderating the chat over on YouTube. Again, he's always there. Amazing. And I see actually a good question out here about hedging. And if I can find it real quick. Oh, yes. It's somebody, I think it's in Mandarin, so I can't read the name, but it says, should the Nuggets continue playing the hard hedge? Which is an interesting question. And we'll jump around because, hey, this is YouTube and the internet. The Nuggets continue playing the hard hedge. It's funny because to me, Jokic is dropping, so he's not hedging. I think that hard hedging is just a mistake no matter what, only because when the guy guarding the ball screener comes up that high and he has to sprint back to try and get his man, he ends up running into the ball handler's man, and it's almost like screens him. So I think that whole intersection of stuff becomes too complicated to navigate, and I'm always in favor of just dropping the big, forcing him away from the screen anyway, like an ice defense, and just taking your chances on that. What do you think?
I don't mind when they do it with either Millsap or Craig, who I haven't seen Craig do it a lot, but those guys have the foot speed and the balance to pull it off. The reason you do it, obviously, is just because you want to try to force Dame back to the 30-foot zone, because we see that Dame, if he's coming over a screen without a guy right on him, he's shooting every single time. Although we saw tonight that he hit, I think, at least one, if not two 30-footers as well, coming over a canter screen. But when they're showing on the screens, Dame is able to kind of he'll take the blitz and try to drag it out towards the sideline and then find Cantor on the short roll, and Cantor will either try to take it into the paint or he'll swing it to Rodney Hood or whomever is on the other wing, and they're able to get a lot of good ball movement out of that. So I still like Denver trying to just go into a drop scheme, and because Cantor isn't going to shoot high, so you can do a deep drop against them as long as the point guard defender is going to get, whoever's defending Dame is going to get over the screen as well as possible. And that's why Dame kept trying to get a switch on Jamal Murray, and credit to Denver, they did a good job of trying to resist getting Jamal switched onto him.
Great analysis. I agree with all of that. You know what? Let's move over to the Periscope. A good question about the Sixers and the Raptors. Quintessential asks, do you think the Sixers figured anything, or did Toronto just not play that hard? So I'm hate watching this series because you can't figure out what's going on, right, between these two teams. From one game to the next, you think you figure it out, and then they crap the bed. And again, the Raptors did not. They actually looked okay, and it kind of felt like they were going to absorb the initial run by the Sixers with all the energy they have, the home crowd, and then just slowly take control of that game. Nick Nurse did not have a good game, I thought, and that was sort of the issue. By the middle of the third, or toward the end of the third, they went on a run. They cut it to 8 or so, and then the Sixers went on a run, and they didn't call a timeout. And he was like 3 possessions late calling it, and it went from like a 9-point lead to a 17-point lead. And the problem was they weren't running offense at that point. And that's when you got to cut it off right away and say, call a timeout, run it, drop a set. And I thought that was a huge turning point, and it just was like, what are you doing, man? Like, that should have been obvious in the playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto, the only time they really showed life was that kind of early-ish second quarter run there where they were really working Ibaka, and apparently Nick is just tired of the show and wants to run away. But they did a good job of trying to get deep pick and roll penetration so that Ibaka could get weird little floaters, finding a way to keep him involved. Welcome back, Nick. And then of course, Kawhi had some great transition play as well. But Toronto just seemed kind of listless the entire time. And shout out to my guy Michael Pina, who had a really fascinating feature in I think it was with SB Nation today, about Ben Simmons being like technically the fastest player in the NBA. And Ben Simmons played as if he read Pina's piece today, which, hey, maybe he did, where Simmons was just trying to really kind of run past everybody. And even in the half court, he was really he was playing with determination, and maybe that's the difference, and that's what makes Simmons a great half court player as his career evolves, is that he just plays with this pure aggression where he's just really trying to like initiate contact and use his speed to just blow by guys. Because we were seeing so many plays where he would start from the elbow and just get by everybody, when usually in the past he kind of just tries to like dribble around and then jump and throw some weird little handoff that always looks kind of like he doesn't even know how to play basketball. And so this was the game where I thought Simmons looked the most coherent of any playoff game so far this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like, he had his most, he imposed his will most on this game, and it really helps him. And again, when he is going full speed, he is now at his best, right? Where they don't have to worry about him sagging off and then not letting him shoot, and they get stuck in the dunker spot and all this different stuff. So obviously they got to run as much as they possibly can. It's what we saw. I just did a video for The Athletic, by the way, so you should go over there and check it out, where I broke down how the Bucks beat the Celtics. And basically, they went from leading the league in the regular season with 21% fast break frequency. They got that over 26% against the Celtics. And primarily because when they did set it up, they had a terrible half-court offense that would have been 29th in the league in points per possession. And then when they were obviously in transition, it was much higher, like where they were in a normal regular season. So it's almost like, had they not pushed the pace as much as they possibly could, I don't know if they win the series, even though it seemed pretty easy for the Bucks to do it. So it's paramount for the Sixers to do the same thing, only because, when Ben Simmons starts to wander and his man can get in the way easily, it really bogs down their offense. And you can't afford to have that kind of stuff, when you are in a seventh game in the playoffs. Omari Confer, let's give him a little shout out. He just gave a super chat something, and thank you. That was really cool on 199. So that way, that is a thing if you want to do on YouTube, where you can get your questions up faster by doing a little super chat.
Quickly to interject, it's really easy to have 25 of your possessions be fast break when your opponent's missing about 70% of their shots. I mean, Boston was missing so many shots, so many open threes. Obviously, if you get the ball to Giannis and there's only 3 defenders in front of him, that's a fast break every single time, and he's going to get to the rim almost every time. So that was, I think, a huge part of that was just that the Celtics shot really poorly, and obviously Denver's defense deserves credit. I mean, not Denver, Milwaukee's defense deserves credit. They're the best defense in the NBA for a reason. That was very apparent.
Right. Well, just like the Celtics are the best defense in the NBA, Wix is actually the best best platform you can use to design a website. And if you need a website that has to look and function beautifully, That's where Wix comes in. Join over 140 million people who have used Wix to design their site, and you'll be choosing from over 500 stunning templates or build one from scratch. Jared, you got a Wix website, don't you?
I don't, but I should make one. I'm a professional MBA writer and analyst. Shouldn't I have my own website? I feel like I'm overdue to build myself a Wix website.
Right, especially because everything is automated, optimized for any device. They have built-in SEO tools. Do you know what SEO stands for?
Shit, I don't know.
Search engine optimization.
Yes, oh my God. Wow.
So
it's late.
Yeah.
It's 1:30 on the East Coast right now.
Right. Well, your website will get found easily. You don't need to know any code to make it function and however you like. You can start and publish a website for free. And right now you can get 10% off their premium services if you go to wix.com/podcast. So don't miss out on building your next site. It's an incredibly easy process. The interface can walk you through it step by step, and you'll have something to be proud of and up and running in no time. So click on the wix.com/podcast and push the limits of web design with Wix. And guess what? That link is not the right one. I think I have an old script. So I'm going to look for that while we talk about something else I want to talk about, which is starters on teams in this round who shouldn't be starters on a conference finals team.
Okay, well, here's a great place to start because we just got a question from, let me find the person, Andrew Lee, who has an actual standard name instead of a weird nickname. But Andrew Lee asked, where would the Blazers be with Nurkic starting right now? So let's talk about Enes Kanter versus Nurkic.
Okay. Where would they be? Well, also you have to look in the context of they have Nurkic and then they have Kanter coming off the bench, right? And that would be a really good 1-2 punch for them, which they had when he got there. So are they better? I mean, listen, it's a game 7. Do the Blazers win in 6 games with Nurkic then, based on what we've seen?
I mean, the fact that they can beat Denver at all, I think, is showing that right now it's not making a huge difference. They would definitely be better. I don't think there's anything that Kanter does that's better than what Nurkic does. I think they're equally effective in the pick and roll. They're equally effective scoring down low. Nurkic is a smarter, more flexible defender. So yeah, I don't think there's any advantage that Kanter can provide for them. I think that they're lucky in that this is a series in which the opponent doesn't go small. The opponent plays big most of the time, which plays into Kanter pretty well. So they got lucky with this matchup. I mean, I don't think it's going to work out nearly as well for them against Golden State, unless Durant is out for that whole series, assuming they win, of course. And they're playing, and Golden State is playing with a center out there most of the time. But I mean, they got lucky. Kanter has been playing hard. He's been playing not terribly stupid, and his scoring has been great. I mean, he's running the pick and roll pretty well with Dame, and that's, I think, the biggest thing they wanted was they needed somebody to get physical penetration, which sounds like a weird sex thing to say it. They needed someone to be strong and get through the middle of the defense. And they have that because they don't have anybody on the roster that does that, except for now that Rodney Hood has emerged, of course. And I guess we could even throw Rodney Hood into this category since it seems like part of the finishing lineup, even if he's not going to be starting.
Yes, that's all very good points. The Wix website, I believe, maybe is right. Wix.com/podcast. It seems too general for me, but
Jared After Dark. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yes, and that was a little bit risky or racy. Not unlike what Steve Kerr got caught yesterday. Not caught. He did it on purpose. He dropped a couple F-bombs in the post-game conference. Did you see that?
I did. By the way, I feel like I should have asked you this before we started. Am I allowed to drop F-bombs on the live show here?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I don't have a problem with it. I mean,
we'll save it for later, though.
I don't have a problem normally with with swearing like in the pod. This is the live show, YouTube, whatever. But hey, we also have some other business to take care of. Although it doesn't tell me who I got. There's another super chat came in here. This is amazing.
Oh, shout out Larry Turner, $5 donation. Wow.
Oh, that's where. Okay, I saw that. There it is. But I didn't see the name. Okay, but we also have some orange things to take care of, right? When they pop up as orange, I got to take care of those. So let's do that real quick. Kalish Krishnan asks, do you think the Raptors will win Game 7? Because I do. I always go with the home team, although I feel like in recent years the home team isn't 95% guaranteed to win that game, but I still feel like they're going to win at home, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, has home team been indicative in that series? I think it's really just what side of the bed does Pascal Siakam or Tobias Harris or Joel Embiid wake up on, really? I mean, those are the guys that I think are the biggest variable for each team. I don't think there's any way to possibly predict what's going to happen in that Game 7. Like, I expect Denver to win Game 7. I think that they're gonna at home they're gonna be performing at their best. They're going to be executing a little bit better on defense. They'll be able to execute their game plan better. But Philly and Toronto, there are just so many things all over the place. I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. I guess I would lean Philly just because everybody's playing so well at this point. But Philly seems like the kind of team that could just flop on the road.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and also, is Embiid going to come and play and not get sick or whatever? It's hard to figure that out because Gasol at various times looks like he can handle Embiid no problem, and then other times Gasol can't even score on Gary Harris or on not Gary Harris, on Tobias Harris. I can't even know if I want to make a prediction. I mean, that's why the only thing I can say is home because it's been such a wild series without a real flow to it. So Kevin Tanako asks, what is hedging for casuals who want to improve their b-ball IQ? So hedging is when if I'm guarding the ball screener, okay, so then a pick and roll, I will step up kind of high above my man to force the ball handler away from, so he can't turn the corner around the ball screen. And it's an old school thing. It's how we used to always do it. There was no notion of ice defense where you would drop back. You used to demand, no matter who it was or how slow the guy was, you used to demand the center had to go out there and hedge and make the point guard turn more towards the half court line. And they finally figured out that these big slow guys can't handle that so well in the NBA, and then it's trickled down.
And an important differentiation. Sometimes you'll hear the word show. I've always heard a mix of some people think that those are interchangeable, but I've always understood it to be that a hedge is when you kind of basically just go over the screen just to show that you're there, while a show is where you get your entire body over the screen and you actually quickly stop the ball handler, as opposed to a hedge, which is kind of just quickly peeking out just to kind of make the ball handler go over you, while a show is almost like a single man trap before retreating and then letting the ball handler's defender catch up to the ball handler.
Well, the funny thing is I would flip that. To me, hedging would be the hard hedge. You go up over the screener, and then show would just be you kind of more flat and letting the ball handler kind of go peek or whatever, but you let him go more horizontal or more lateral than up and down. But either way, those are all basically the same thing. And I don't know. I don't even coach that anymore. I don't coach hedging really. I coach either blast them, which is like the double team, or drop.
Yeah, there's very few teams that are doing that at this point. Cleveland was doing it with Kevin Love for the last couple of years under Ty Lue in the finals, but that's pretty much it. I can't think of any other major competitive team that was running that scheme.
Yeah, right. And it stands out when you see it, at least for me. Xerxes is back, and he says he asked in Game 3 the same question as he asked now. My prediction for the Raps game. I guess we kind of just covered that. And do you think Kawhi will stay if the Raptors get in the East Finals? Man, I mean, certainly if they don't get in the East Finals, we know Kawhi is gone. I think we know he's gone anyway, right? What do you think?
I think the finals is maybe that level that he needs to get to reconsider. If they get to the East Finals and then Giannis in Milwaukee smokes them, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that his decision is too based on success, unless obviously they have a really good finals run and everyone's saying, let's come back next week, really make it happen. I think that everybody has been saying around the league, people that are really well plugged in publicly, people that I've talked to privately that are really well plugged in have always been saying consistently throughout the year that he's going to the Clippers. They all be wrong, but the same people that told me LeBron was going to the Lakers back in January of last year are telling me the same thing about Kawhi to the Clippers, and they were right. So I'm going to trust them.
Okay, I could agree with that one. It makes sense to me. Let's see here.
We never answered Larry Turner's question that he paid $5 for. So let's make sure we address that.
Wait, so I don't see the question.
Van Fleet and Norm.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I got it covered. So Van Fleet and Norm Powell haven't impacted the series at all. Is not having OG in the second unit hurting those two? That's a very good question. I like that one.
And it's the only explanation, right? I mean, how Van Vliet has completely fallen off, and Powell is sort of never, he's been off and on anyway for his career. But I don't know. I can't figure out what Van Vliet's deal is. And certainly OG being there and not being there is something, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, OG was just really valuable in that one. He provides great defensive length. He's, he can rip and go from the elbow. So there was always it's easy to kick out if Fred VanVleet's getting overwhelmed by a defender and can kick it to OG. But I think VanVleet's issue is that the physicality is bothering him. He's one of the smallest point guards out there. He's getting pushed around. He looks like he's scared to be out there. He doesn't look comfortable driving into the teeth of the defense like he usually does. I mean, he's usually like a fairly fearless player who just has great control of his body and the ball, and he's got great balance, and he's comfortable shooting in tight spaces, and his three-point stroke is usually going, and that's not going right now either. So he just seems just like he's psyched out right now. And I don't even know if they're going to play him really. They might take him out of the rotation for the most part in Game 7. They might go down to like a 6.5 man rotation.
Right. I mean, I at this point it's too late, but I would have tried Jeremy Lin at some point. I don't know what the deal was. I don't think he played well when he got there, but he it would have been it could have been better than what they're getting from him. But we'll see.
But back still is a problem for him. So I guess
is it really? Okay.
Not active. Yeah.
All right. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It's too bad.
Anyhow, all right. Well, we got some other super chats in here. So again, thank you. Which, by the way, before I answer these really quickly, because they're all great questions, would you guys want to have me offer like exclusive content on YouTube for like a monthly fee? They have these super fan things now where you can actually pay. Let me know in the comments, or let me know wherever else I can see that. And because I'm actually looking at it and I'm wondering if it's worth even trying, because it's not often that I tried it once like a couple of years ago and it didn't work out that well, but on something different. But let me know what you think about that, because I got plenty of content that I can create that would be exclusive that you guys would love. We have Quad MFT in the super chat asks, what can the Kings do to improve next season? All right, let's hijack the chat and talk about the Kings for a second. What do you think? I mean, they hired Luke Walton in a really surprising move. They fired the coach anyway. They fired Jaeger, right?
Yeah.
And that
well, Luke Walton's hired for now. Don't forget what's going on with him.
Yeah, all right. And that was all really shocking too. The accusations of sexual assault. Yeah. And so, although it's gone quiet, so it kind of makes me feel like I don't know, but you're right. It could be something.
It's gonna pop back up.
Yeah, but I think the Kings are in really great shape. I love who they have on their team right now as young players. They do need to figure out a way to maximize them better. And now that they have another season together of experience, they should be better. They just happen to play in the West.
Yeah, actually, wait. What can the Kings do to improve? Okay, don't overpay Willie Cauley-Stein. I think that they're in a position right now where they don't want to so like a lot of teams that are in their stage of building will kind of load up their cap because they figure we're not going to be a player in free agency. And so they'll start committing to some of the players that are like good, but not great. And Willie Cauley-Stein just seems to me the kind of player that if you sign him to 15, 16 a year, he's just all of a sudden going to be an albatross contract to you. And you know what? Look at Brooklyn. I mean, I know Sacramento obviously is not Brooklyn, but like Brooklyn was a dead-end franchise. They took a very similar approach to building their franchise as Sacramento did, even if the way that they acquired a lot of their talent was different. And obviously the circumstances that they had to build under were very different. But I feel like both teams are kind of in a pretty similar position as far as like their caliber of talent and how they're trending upwards. And Brooklyn now is looking like a free agency destination. And if Sacramento can really exhibit that the young talent that they have on board here, and they've got Buddy Hield, who is 27 now, I believe is what we've clarified. So he's like entering his prime, right? Yeah. But you have Fox, who's 21, I think.
The fantastic Fox.
And then Beasley is 20. Beasley, came on really strong. It showed a ton of reason why they somehow took him over Luka Doncic, and obviously that proved to be a mistake at least this year. But maybe Beasley will work out for them in the future as a superstar. But they've got a really good core right there.
Oh, you didn't say Bogdanovich. He's my favorite player on my favorite players list.
Bogdanovich is really good, but he's not the core that you're selling a potential free agent on necessarily. Okay. And so, yeah, I think that there's a lot to sell to free agents. And, this offseason, there's a ton of cap space out there. So they might not be lucky in that, like, they don't have the market cornered on cap space, so they can try to lure in a really like a second tier free agent that couldn't get paid elsewhere, although that still could happen. But next year they might be able to. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good talent for them to pick from next year. So I think making sure that they don't give out any contracts that are, like, it's really hard to do this, especially as a small market franchise. You have to have the patience to be willing to make the sacrifice to develop a player for 4 years, and they don't turn out to be quite who you wanted them to be. And if they want you to pay market or even above market price, if they're just not who you want them to be, you have to move on. And that's why your drafting has to be so great, both in the first and the second round, is because you need to have talent behind those guys to come in and fill in for them when they just outperform their contract value or underperform it.
Yeah, listen, I get out of the way of Jared, and he'll break it down for you in a beautiful way. So we have another one. Let's see, where is the other question we have that is here? Dr. Pineapple. Oh, no, Orlando Biotechnology asks, why is James Harden less aggressive on certain nights? You know, it's funny. I just did a breakdown. And by the way, I didn't necessarily want to release the video like at 7 o'clock at night in the Pacific Coast time, but there was like some weird glitch on YouTube. So please go and watch the Warriors Rockets video I just dropped, because it's a really cool dive into how Steph and how Klay shoot based on whether Kevin Durant is on the floor or not. And I came up with some interesting insights I think you guys will enjoy. So go watch it when we're done with this. But someone mentioned, though, in the Game 5 or Game 6, Game 5, that Harden took like maybe one shot in the last like 7 minutes of the game. And like I didn't even have a chance to really go through it to think about it. But like that's a real problem if that's really the case. I need to check. But I think that he might get stuck in certain situations where he feels like he's not getting calls. Iguodala, by the way, is a really great equalizer. And in the video that I showed, I have another video actually. I'm prepping. I'm sorry, my mind is mush about who's the best defender on Harden on the Warriors. And a little quick insight was, obviously, it's Iguodala is really good. Kevin Durant actually had the lowest points per possession against Harden, believe it or not. But what Iguodala does is ends up getting the most assists on him. And I think part of that means is that he does so well that he forces him to pass. And now a lot of those passes are just for scoring opportunities. A lot of them are just to get rid of it because he's pressuring him. And that's the nature of wearing him down when you have Iguodala. You used to have Kevin Durant. You have Klay Thompson. Who else can they throw out there? I mean, Livingston a little bit can still do some things. So they're kind of perfectly positioned to guard James Harden, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I don't think there's any team in the league that's better equipped to guard him. And I trust Klay to be on him the majority of the time. And you know what? I don't think Klay's numbers generally look great on Harden, but this because he's guarding Harden so much of the game, and Harden's the most unstoppable scorer of the generation. So, like, as great defense as you're going to play on him, he's going to get his buckets, and you're not going to look like you're completely shutting him out. But I do like your read on the assist numbers for Iguodala. I think Iguodala, he's probably just doesn't have the energy now to be able to like track a guy like that the entire game. But
it looks I mean, yeah, but I'm not seeing him get that tired. Are you?
Oh, yeah, that's true. No, he's not. But the point I was going to make is, if there's any single wing defender in the NBA that you want to guard someone for, one stretch of a game to win the game, maybe besides Kawhi Leonard, is there anyone you'd want more than Andre Iguodala? I mean, he's just the best at it.
Absolutely. I mean, they're just lucky that they can throw waves at him and not have to worry about playing like the Jazz did. Although Jazz had a big center to play that way. But let's go to Larry Turner, who was generous enough earlier tonight asks, Van Vliet and Norman Powell haven't impacted the series at all. Oh, we already asked that. Was the question. We already wow. All right, sorry, I'm like behind. Who should be the Lakers coach? Grant Lau asks. Now this is an interesting question because we haven't really talked about this. Now here's what
anyone that'll take it.
Here was what was fascinating about this. Tyronn Lue, they were like probably an hour away from signing a deal. It sounded like they had some stuff, whatever. And then they insist on bringing Jason Kidd in to be the assistant, and he walked. Now, I think everyone understands this. I didn't really want to go on Twitter and sort of talk about this, but let's talk about it here. Does everybody remember how Ty Lue got his job in Cleveland?
Okay, so hold on. Let's get one thing clear. And yeah, you're right. You're totally right. And so he replaced David Blatt. David Blatt was burying himself, and he was digging his own grave the entire time. I don't know how much of it is public, but here's what I know about how David Blatt got fired was the way it was put to me by.
I'm going to put you at a close-up so we can hear this.
Okay, here we go. I'm trying to think how I can say this. The way it was put to me by someone who knows about the situation, very intimately knows about the situation, is that David Blatt was arguably one of the most famous people in Israel when he was coaching there. He was coaching Maccabi Tel Aviv, right? Wasn't Maccabi Haifa. Tel Aviv, right?
Yeah.
And so Maccabi Tel Aviv is the biggest sport franchise in the country of Israel. And he was the coach, and they were extremely successful on the European stage. So he was a huge deal in that country. And he walked around, and he would walk down the street, and every single person knew who he was. He was like LeBron level famous, apparently, in Israel, or at least akin to, he was significantly famous. He came to the NBA and expected to have just like expected to have a Rick Pitino level, or Tom Izzo level of control, like a entrenched college coach level of control. And he and LeBron obviously clashed over that. That did not work whatsoever. And Blatt would be walking around going like, why isn't everybody showing me respect? I'm David Blatt. Do you know who I am? And he had this massive ego. And because I wasn't around Blatt, I don't know if it was necessarily an ego or really just like an expectation that he was going to get the authority that is expected that the coach is supposed to have. Because, it's like he's been a coach his whole life. And the NBA seems to be like the only place where head coaches don't have significant authority over their team, which I think is obviously a bad thing. But, that's how it's going to go when players are making $40 million. But so he got fired because of that kind of stuff. And Ty Lue is the exact opposite. Ty Lue is he's a player who all the players respect. All the coaches also seem to respect Ty Lue. I mean, he was Doc Rivers' protege. And I remember Ty, right after he retired, he came and he started working for Doc, and he was around the Celtics all the time when I first started covering them, and I used to talk to him, and he was great. Everybody liked him, and I like Ty, even though he's horrible with the media now, but he's great in real life when you're talking to him when the cameras aren't around anymore. And so all that is to say that Jason Kidd, I don't think has the same gravitas that Ty Lue has, which is ironic to say since Ty Lue does not have gravitas in front of the media and is terrible when cameras are on. But behind closed doors, people really seem to respect and like Ty Lue, and I have in my interactions with him off the record. And so I think the Ty Lue situation is not congruent with Jason Kidd. And to get to the reality of the situation, sorry, I'll stop my rant here, is that what really happened based on kind of finding the overlap and like the 6 different angles and outlets that were reporting on this between what Woj had and what Ramona Shelburne had, what B.A. Turner had, who's been having some very interesting leaks coming from the Lakers over the last year or so. And then was it Sam Amick and Bill Oram for us was that, and Shams, I think Shams Charania also had a lot on this one, was that Ty Lue accepted Jason Kidd coming on board. And as a caveat, he wanted a full 5-year deal, probably in like the 35 million range or something, which would make him one of the highest paid coaches. And 5-year deals seem to be pretty standard for accomplished head coaches right now in the NBA. And so he wanted to be paid commensurate with someone who's won titles, who has demonstrated that he can coach the most uncoachable player in the NBA. And they basically, told him, we're going to line up your contract with LeBron's contract, which is I'm sure he likes being the LeBron whisperer and the guy that finally managed to really get a hold of LeBron besides Spoelstra, obviously. But like, he doesn't define his career by that, even if so many of us in the public do. Like, he was a player for a long time. He's been working his whole life to be a coach. He doesn't want to be tied to LeBron. Not to mention, he doesn't want his contract and his career to be stipulated based on whatever the hell LeBron is going to do, because he knows if they're giving him that contract, then that means that if LeBron leaves, they're probably going to let him go and put somebody else that they want in there.
Right. Fair enough. And you're right. The low ball offer in the short amount of years certainly must have been insulting to him. And I don't know if it's a negotiating ploy, but it just sounds like they're done, right? He walked away. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I guess if that's the reporting, he was okay with Jason Kidd. I would just think that, he's just waiting in the wings to take over your job. He's already been head coach. He wants to be a head coach. And, from personal experience, when you have an assistant coach that you don't trust, it ruins everything. It could be worse than any other situation you might have. So I could see why he wouldn't want to have that, but whatever. I mean, either way, it's a mess for the Lakers. Apparently, Lue wasn't even their first choice. Is that right?
It's not really clear. I mean, there was a report that they had so there was Monty Williams and
right.
Lou were like the top two candidates, and that allegedly because those guys were getting their interviews done, and it was very public, and then the whole situation seemed to go dormant for a little while. And somebody had reported that they did that so that Monty Williams would just eventually balk and take the Phoenix job, and then they would have no one left to choose but Ty Lue, and so that would be somebody within the organization kind of slipping Ty Lue into the winning by default or winning unopposed situation.
Mm-hmm.
And really, after this whole Jason Kidd fiasco, if for one, the other thing that came out was that apparently, reportedly, the front office was trying to force Kurt Rambis onto Luke Walton's staff, and that played a role in Luke getting fired.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, Kurt Rambis is just hangs around, man. He just doesn't ever disappear.
I don't know how he does it. Like, I don't know Kurt personally. I think I've met him once, and he seemed like a nice guy. I don't know if he's really qualified or not. I mean, he has not had any success in his coaching career, but there's a lot. Yeah. We and as a coach, there's a lot of coaches out there with horrible records that are really good coaches. They just haven't had the opportunity yet. Like, look at Steve Clifford. He's finally getting a chance to turn his record around after all those years. Which reminds me, we do have a question about the Hornets and somebody.
Yes, let's do that right now because I feel bad for Dr. Pineapples, who asks,
there we go,
what's best for the Hornets this offseason? And it kind of roils my brain because I don't know exactly what they're going and what their plan is here. Are you aware of what the free agent situation is for them? Who's getting off the books right now?
Well, there's this guy named Kemba Walker that's hitting free agency.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
You know what? Dr. Pineapples, if you can answer this in the comments, how do you feel about Kemba Walker leaving? Because I think all of us around the NBA want to see Kemba Walker go to New York, one of the New York teams, where he'll be the hometown hero. He's a great player who has been stuck on the treadmill of mediocrity his whole career. And people think because I covered the Celtics, people think I'm biased and that I want to see Anthony Davis leave New Orleans. I couldn't care less where Anthony Davis goes. I mean, it'd be great if I could cover him, but also he's not a very exciting person to cover as a media person. So whatever. But it's just that you hate seeing these all-time great players get stuck on teams that are just stuck in the 30s to 40s. And Kemba is this guy that I think maybe 3 years ago we thought he was turning into an all-star, and in the last 2 years it's been apparent that he's like a borderline superstar. If he was playing in New York this whole time, he'd be an absolute bona fide superstar, but he's stuck in a team that is both a small market and has not been successful. And I think just for his sake and for the sake of the NBA, it would just be so great if he could move to a larger franchise where he has a chance to, one, be like a real superstar where he gets the media attention that's commensurate with his game, which is extremely exciting to watch and is aesthetically pleasing, and has a chance to really compete because he's done everything you could want. He has been everything you could want as an NBA player. He's a great leader, great clubhouse guy, and incredibly exciting talent, and is really part of the trend of players evolving as he's been at the forefront of the evolution of the position as well.
Right. The only question here is he getting stats on a bad team, or is he a guy who his stats will improve and get more efficient by being on a better team? I definitely feel like he's in that latter group where he is a bona fide all-star and good, despite the situation around him. In fact, and I think that, he would probably end up, you'd see better numbers from him. I mean, I'm just looking at this past year. I mean, 25.6 points a game. But he shot 356 from 3-point land on a high volume and 43% from the field, which actually isn't even that off. A typical player who you think was he's only good on a bad team would probably be closer to 40%, right, on field goal percentage overall, and 32%. But he has a lot of assists and a lot of whatever. So and he doesn't even have that many assists. Again, had he played on a team with better players, he probably gets 8 or 9 assists a game, I imagine. I think that he's probably gone. That's going to decimate Charlotte even worse because they're not going to get anybody to replace him. So it looks like they're heading for the lottery. They're already in the lottery, but even lower in the lottery.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as cap space, if the cap does come in at 109, then they're going to have, let's see, if MKG and Marvin Williams opt in, that's 18 million right there. So they're going to have about 16 million in a cap space. If they let go of Tony Parker, Willie Gomez, Twain Bacon, they're not going to extend the QO to Frank Kaminsky, obviously, especially after they screwed him over and didn't release him when he so badly wanted to get released. So they're stuck because they're stuck paying. They're paying Nick Batum and Bismack Biyombo 42.5 million right now. And Cody Zeller's on a 14-15 million dollar a year contract, and Zeller's like solid, but he's not quite worth that money.
No.
But yeah, so 16 million isn't enough for them to replace Kemba with like a big star.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have the draft pick that they need to, really replace him. So they're stuck on the treadmill of mediocrity for more now. But I think at this point they should just be trying to shed as much salary. I mean, this offseason they can't shed too much, but next offseason they can pretty much clear the books except for Cody Zeller, I think is the only person I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh no, Nick Batum is a $27 million player option.
Yeah, he's signing that one. So it's
and they'll have the team options on Malik Monk and Miles Bridges, which are no brainers. So yeah.
Now remember, Mitch Kupchak is now the executive there, so I suspect he will get some stuff cleaned up, but it's going to take him several years, I imagine, before they get it in order. We have another really good question here from Lovely Day as part of a super chat. Thank you. Where do you stand on the trading Embiid or Simmons debate? On the trading Embiid or Simmons debate. I'll throw it out there real quick. Let's see what my take. Obviously, here's the only question. The only reason why you'd ever even consider trading Embiid is because you think he's going to get hurt again, and he's just never going to be a player who plays more than 50 games a year. Otherwise, it's a no-brainer. And then in that context, then you simply don't trade him because I don't think you can run a franchise assuming injury like that. Now, that said, the way he runs, and I've talked about this before, indicates to me that I think he'll have perennial injuries to his knees the way he shuffles like that. So, but you can't. He's a great star. He has that certain thing, that star power that you need to have, and will fill seats. Now, Ben Simmons, though, I mean, I'm always partial to shooting. So a guy like that who can't shoot and he doesn't know how to shoot and clearly doesn't have the training to help him get better is a guy who I would look to trade to get the most I can. The question then is when is his value the highest? I suppose if he continues and, like he did, and let's say they win this series and they get to the conference finals and he plays well, this would be probably a really good time to get a maximum value for him. So if you had to trade either one of them, if that is sort of the context of the question, then I'm saying, you got to trade Simmons.
I trade neither, but Ben Simmons could be had if you blow me away with something complex and fascinating. You give me a player that, you would want like a Tobias Harris type of player or maybe a Jimmy Butler type of player. Like if they keep that whole thing together, I don't really see the point of trading him because you can't trade. It's very unlikely that you can trade Ben Simmons in a 1-for-1 deal where you're getting commensurate value.
Right. Because it's a rookie contract, right?
Yeah, I guess that too. But just like he's such a massive. I mean, he's one of the best prospects in the NBA. He's already an all-star, so it's just so hard to find someone that's worthwhile to make that trade for. I can't think of anyone that I could even imagine being on the market. Although I assume Simmons is also someone who's not on the market, so it would have to be for someone who isn't on the market. And so, Simmons, we're seeing it here is that. There's so much potential just if he just increases his aggression and changes his mindset and his footwork and stuff like that, even without that 12-footer that we have agreed in previous podcasts is really all he needs to really kind of just create that pull to get out of the paint and be useful. He doesn't even have to do what Giannis is doing now, hitting spot up shots from 25 feet, which is mind blowing. And we should talk about that at some point because the league could be broken open by Giannis by next year, if not already right now.
Yeah.
But Simmons, there's so much there. And I've been really low on Simmons and I've criticized him a ton. And last year I said that he was terribly overrated and that the Celtics showed how you can shut him down. And I still feel the same way, but there's only a few teams that can shut him down. It's only happening in the playoffs, really. And he's going to continue to grow. And we have to he was a rookie last year and that happens. It takes these guys 5 years. Giannis has been in the league for 5-6 years now, 6 years,
mm-hmm.
right? So it took him a long time to get to this. It takes these guys a long time. And it's just that Simmons is on the stage way earlier than you would expect. So I have a lot of confidence that he's going to continue to grow. What you said about the shooting thing is right. And I think I've talked to you off the record about this, and I'm not going to go into it on the record right now just because it's something I'm going to be reporting at some point. And there's a lot more reporting I have to do on this, but there is a story to why Ben Simmons is still shooting the way he is and why it's not changing. And it's not, let's just say Ben Simmons is not an idiot and is not completely unaware of many people who are very well qualified saying he needs to change his shot. There are many reasons to it. I'm not going to be able to go into it right now, but maybe if we get if there's someone that wants to pay like $10,000 for a private stream, maybe we can talk about it there.
Okay, there you go.
But,
hey.
I'll sell my journalistic integrity for 10,000 a stream. But
all right,
no, not
well,
really.
But speaking of integrity, Dr. Pineapples again. We just want to thank you for being part of the super chat. This really gracious thing that you're doing, and thanks for the nice words. Andrew Zhao, probably, is Eric Gordon's contract the best bargain? And thank you for being part of the super chat again. A great question. Do you know what Eric Gordon's getting paid?
Aaron Gordon or Eric Gordon?
Eric Gordon.
Eric Gordon.
Rockets.
I can tell you that in 18
It's probably
seconds.
I'm going to guess that he's getting
I think he's 14 million this
Oh.
I think it's like 13 and a half this year.
Yeah.
13 and a half. Yeah, there we go. And
That's
then 14 next year.
Yeah, it's a great bargain. I mean, the guy's pretty much a starter for them. I guess a starter for them now. Here's the funny thing about Eric Gordon. I mentioned on Twitter and wherever else I've talked about it, is he's the one guy who he'll hit some shots and you're like, God, the guy's on fire. And then you check the box score and he's like 2 for 8 or like 3 for 11. It's crazy. But he hits timely shots when he does. And he does go on rolls. He's very streaky. But man, he's just tough. He can take it to the rack. The guy is probably like my height. He might be like 6'1" in shoes. And yet he can finish at the rim too. So I'm impressed with what he can do with what his physical package is. And there's no question of the Rockets. He fits them perfectly.
Yeah. By the way, people were asking what year Simmons is. I was saying last year he was a rookie and then he got shut down. This year is his second year, although technically it's his third year in the NBA, second year playing whatever. Yeah. Right. Eric. I feel like Eric Gordon goes like 3 for 11 or like 5 for 15 or something like that from three. Like for him, it's just like he'll hit enough threes that it feels like he's getting it in, but like in reality the percentages are bad. But hey, every once in a while he has like a 7 for 11 game, and that's when he completely wins the game single-handedly. And you're right, he does his damage in the fourth a lot of the time, and that's what's great about him, is he is a really good crunch time player. Right.
And from deep, like that wing three he takes from the logo basically is there's no closeout. You can't get there. It's great.
I know, right? And he's really strong, really powerful. I mean, he can really get to the rim. And I don't know why, I'm just remembering this now. There's a guy out of Iowa State named Talon Horton Tucker, who I scouted when he was in high school, and he is like a carbon copy of Eric Gordon. Like the body, the shooting style, like everything about him is like exactly like Eric Gordon. Like short, super bulky, like pop shooter, kind of like that. You should check. I think you'll find him interesting, and everybty watching should check him out. He's probably going to go late first round, I'd imagine.
All right, well, let's run through really quickly some comments I want to get through as we get to the end of our stream here. Daniel Evans had an interesting suggestion for Becky Hammon could be Lakers head coach. Do you think that she's going to be head coach at some point?
Probably, yeah. I mean, she's moving up the ladder in San Antonio. San Antonio's top assistants keep getting targeted. So she's getting towards a point where she'll be in that chair and she'll get targeted, because the interviews that she's been getting, I think, are mostly a lot of the similar interviews that kind of like backbench coaches get, where it's like teams identify that these are going to be really good coaching prospects down the road, or could be targets for like for like first or second chair assistant. And so they use their opening as a chance to interview them, knowing that they're most likely they're not going to hire them as the coach, but they could the next time around, or they could be moving them up. So, I mean, everybody loves Becky Hammon in San Antonio. She's a very well-regarded coach. When she was coming up for coaching interviews, she was pretty early in her career to be getting the job. So, but then again, there's a lot of other, recently retired players that are getting the shot. And I mean, I know she's from a different league, obviously, but, she's one of the best players ever in her league. And so I feel like it's not terribly different than like Ty Lue getting hired pretty quickly, or kind of climbing through the ranks pretty quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her do it in a couple of years.
Yeah, she has a very serious energy about her. If you're near her, it's like, which I think is good. Like you're going to take her seriously. Yeah, she's intense. That's the word I'm looking for. Yes, in a way that probably will help. And because she's, not going to be able to afford any mess. Like, she's going to have to get in there and make these men, listen to her. And she's got that good energy. So, and she's certainly learning from the best. So that will be a good situation.
Let's be real about it. Like, if you're a woman who's going to succeed in that position, you have to usually probably bring a combination of being like very like stern and very serious and very aggressive with the work, but also have kind of a lighter side and show that you're able to kind of be playful too. And so I think she seems to balance that pretty well. And, Nancy Lieberman, who's been a coach in the NBA for a long time, she's always had that reputation. There's a couple other coaches, I think, female coaches in the league right now too, right?
Well, there's Natalie Nakase from the Clippers, and I think she's a bench coach now, or she was the I want to say individual instruction, player development. But yeah, she's around. There's a few others. I think I'm blanking, but
it's the Pacers have one of their senior basketball, like assistant director of basketball ops, is female. Okay. Who's a pretty recent hire, I believe. Yeah. So it's growing. It's great. You're seeing diversity, racial diversity and gender diversity is increasing on the bench and in front offices more and more now.
Yeah. Okay, we got another interesting question as we wrap up here. New Doughboy asks, well, where did his go? Yes. Do you think it would benefit the NBA to maybe get rid of some teams to stretch the good talent around more, like the Hornets, the Grizz, Suns? They could go, honestly. You know what? And Adam Silver was actually just quoted about maybe lessening the number of games in a season. And part of the other question then is, okay, maybe if you squeeze the games lower, then maybe you get a team or two out. Like, it'll never, ever happen. There's too much money to be made, but I would think it would make it better. I do think that we have a couple of we just have too many teams and not enough. Now, the question only now is as we globalize more and more and the training gets better and better, maybe, in a few more years, we will have enough teams or enough players to fill these teams with good players, and everyone will be closer to 500. But what do you think?
I think it's definitely don't contract the number of teams. Contraction, I think, is never ideal. There's more than enough talent because you're right. The way that the NBA has been doing an amazing job of setting up all their global academies, they're bringing over so much talent. I mean, just look at how many players are coming over from Africa now. Look at how many players from Africa and Australia are in Canada. Just those three countries are a big part of just probably what's going on right now in Europe too. I mean, we have. How many of the stars that are playing right now are even American born? Like half, at least in these series right now, half of them, really. It's amazing. So it's going to continue to grow. The NBA Africa academies are getting more and more talent over every year. Now they have a Latin American academy, and that, Latin American basketball is I can't think of anybody off the top of my head right now besides like Eduardo Nájera is from Mexico, right? So there's a huge swath of the world that isn't really tapped. And of course there's Brazil and Argentina. And like Puerto Rico has a huge basketball league, and there's only one Puerto Rican player that I can think of in JJ Barea. So like there's lots of countries where you can get more players coming from. So there's going to be more and more players coming, not to mention as football continues to die at the youth levels, you're going to have more and more of those great athletes coming over to basketball as well.
Yes, thank you for feeding into my football theories about how it's going to be extinct in 20 years.
But there's going to be a ton of young wide receivers, tight ends, running backs that are all going to make great guards in the future.
Okay, let's finish this with a great question from Eddie Hollins saying, I was saying Hood should start for Portland, but I think he should keep coming off the bench. Now, that's the one thing, because we kind of skipped over the second game a little bit here, at least the details.
Right.
But, so Rodney Hood Momma, and someone wanted me to give a Rodney Hood Momma, and I meant to do it earlier, but Rodney Hood Momma, nonetheless, he's his role is great off the bench. It really fits because, teams traditionally have wanted that like spark plug who can score off the bench. But, you're looking at Harkless, you're looking at Aminu, and I'm wondering if Hood could in a game 7 when you want to get off to a good start, replace one of those guys. The biggest problem I have is that with Harkless has Murray on him, and I'm not even sure it's that it's a good idea for Denver simply because they're goading ISO post-ups from Harkless, and it's not a good look. He's just not good at that. It's not part of their offense. He's not scoring, and they keep doing it. So please stop. But I'm just wondering, if maybe there's a way that they should just shove Hood in there or not. What do you think?
I mean, I think you only do it if you're playing a 7-man rotation and you're playing Hood 40 minutes, because Hood's been great because he's playing with CJ in the second unit and Evan Turner, and they're able to, the ET is able to, ET almost like works as like a roll man half the time too. He like gives the ball up and then becomes like a pick and roll playmaker. He had tonight a couple great passes being like a pick and roll playmaker, but you can't mess with that balance because ET, it was really valuable tonight. And if you don't have the right balance around him, it could be a massive negative because they're not guarding up on him high usually. Yeah, so I wouldn't mess with that balance because the Blazers are winning because their offense is consistent throughout the game, and that's because Hood and CJ are playing so well off of each other. And hey, Zach Collins up until the fourth quarter basically was amazing in this game.
Yeah, I've always liked Zach Collins. I think he's developing really nicely, and he's getting there closer and closer. Evan Turner is terrible generally. He had 2 nice passes, but he also came in like the first 3 plays were really just a nightmare. So they got to limit his minutes, even though he's probably only playing like 9 anyway. But here's the thing that's interesting. That starting 5 for Portland did not start out well in the game. They couldn't stop anybody. They were losing by 8 or 9 points throughout that long stretch. So I was wondering, like, geez, do you change up the second half starting lineup? Because teams never do that, almost never. Every once in a while, maybe. But in my mind, that second unit did so well. Maybe Stotts should have said, hey, we should put Hood in that starting lineup. For the second half. They didn't do that, and lo and behold, that first 5 actually did better all of a sudden. They could get some stops. Denver, blinked, and they were able to control it. So it's interesting to see how half to half, you never know what's going on. It's almost like you can't use the first half information to dictate what you want to do in the second half, and it worked out well for them tonight, but I would have a much shorter leash in a Game 7 and have Rodney Hood on that bike, riding it ready to go as quickly as possible when they need him.
And one thing is, so Aminu is he at least spaces the floor well. I mean, he gets really streaky with the shooting. Sometimes he's bearing everything. Sometimes he's missing the rim. But when he's on, and he at least knows how to rip and go if he can attack a closeout. Harkless, his defense is so vital. If you were to take him out and put Hood in there, I feel like Millsap would have a field day. Like Millsap would just take everybody to the block and destroy.
But he's already having basically a field day as it is.
Yeah, right? But he's not dropping 30, and he could if they didn't have the right defensive combination out there.
Well, listen, you just dropped 30 tonight in this podcast, so thank you so much for that. And everybody else out there, fantastic stuff. I mean, this was our best one yet, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, every single one we do is the best one, but so this is one of the best ones.
Always improving.
I feel bad. There's like 100 questions here. I mean, I could stay up at least until 4 a.m. my time. So if you want to answer every one of these questions, we can. But
listen, everyone. Jared's cell phone number is 617. You can call him directly. So. We got to end it now because it's been over an hour. So we I got to get to bed soon. So anyway, awesome stuff.
I love someone says the Foot Show will forever be my favorite show.
The Foot Show, the nightmare from
the legendary Foot Show.
I don't know why. I mean, listen, my wife heard. I told her I did that, and she thought I was looked at me like she was gonna.
I couldn't believe you did that. That was insane. It was the fact that you were just so ready to just do it just because someone made a donation. You're like, oh yeah, sure, why not? Yeah. I wouldn't have done it. So you're a brave man, and
I don't know. It's just a foot to me.
you're a true hero of the people.
All right, well, thank you so much, Jared. Thank you everyone else out there on Periscope and certainly on YouTube. That's really where it's at these days. It's fantastic. Gigolo Puff, thank you there. Dr. Pineapple's Lovely Day, Quad MFT, Larry Turner, Orlando Biotechnology, Andrew Zhu, Dr. Pineapples again, Omari Confer. All you guys were fantastic in the super chat. Awesome stuff, and we will be right back. I mean, we'll do it again when? I guess when is that going to be? The next time we do it is, I don't know. Next week?
I don't know. Tomorrow's my mom's birthday, so not tomorrow. Happy birthday,
Mrs.
Mom.
Weiss.
Thank you. Right. So maybe Saturday.
Ooh. I think, I'm actually out tomorrow night. And
actually, I might have concert tickets. Let's make our plans in front of 550 people or whatever.
All right, you got it. Well, either way,
we'll figure it out and let you people know.
Awesome stuff. We will see you as soon as we can. I'll make sure I'll put a little notice on YouTube in the community, so keep your eye peeled for that. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel. We are a conversation. You in? Are you in, Jared?
I'm in Mother's Day mode.